Did Ukrainian troops burn a life-size doll of a former US president in effigy? So this popped up on Instagram from an account called The Typical Liberal, and I was asked by a few people to determine whether this video was real or deceptive imagery persuasion, or DIP. And it's actually not deceptive imagery persuasion, but that doesn't mean it isn't propaganda. DIP is a very specific method of propaganda where false words are used on top of a real picture to lead the target to a guided conclusion, and you are the target. A good example of DIP is this case where M603 landmine fuses were dropped by IDF soldiers in Gaza, and they were passed off as explosive tins of meat that were dropped on the ground. Someone took a video of the packaging and they claimed that IDF jets were dropping these over hungry citizens in Gaza with the hope that when hungry people opened these tins, they would explode. And of course, that wasn't true. But this keeps popping up as a rumor on Twitter, most recently by former MMA contender Jake Shields, who removed his post after I corrected him. So that's DIP. The video I'm about to show you is just good old-fashioned propaganda. So first I'm going to show you the video, and then Russian journalist Dr. Ksenia Turkova is going to analyze it. Dr. Turkova speaks both Russian and Ukrainian. Here's the video first.
Звертаємося до Дональда Трампа. Через тебе, паскуда, президенту Зеленському не відправляли зброю. Тобі більше не бути президентом. Ти зрадник і заплатиш кров'ю за те, що зробив.
Слава Україні!
Now, when I saw this video, the first thing I did was I asked Dr. Turkova, and she said,
in this video, we can spot several signs of Russian accent. In the Ukrainian language, all words are read as they are spelled. For example, the word president in Ukrainian sounds like president, as it's written, but in the Russian language, it sounds like президент.
Тобі більше не бути президентом.
Although spelling is different, the first vowel in writing is not e. The man in this video says, Trump, тобі більше не бути президентом.
Тобі більше не бути президентом.
You won't be a president again. And he pronounces the last word as prezidentam, although the spelling is prezidentom. And Ukrainian-speaking person would say it exactly that way, prezidentom. You might think it's a small detail, but believe me, for someone who speaks Ukrainian, it's very noticeable. But the main thing is at the end. The man says, you're a traitor, and you will pay with your blood for what you've done.
Ти зрадник і заплатиш кров'ю за те, що зробив.
Have done in the Ukrainian language sounds like зробив. The second syllable is stressed, зробив. And at the end they pronounce something between V and W, зробив. It's one of the most difficult nuances for the Russian-speaking people who are learning Ukrainian, by the way. The man in the video says, зробив. The first syllable is stressed. And there is F sound at the end, зробив.
Ти зрадник і заплатиш кров'ю за те, що зробив.
Which is typical for the Russian language, to unvoice the voiced consonants at the end. I don't know any Ukrainian who would pronounce it like the man in this video.
Dr. Turkova is a journalist for Voice of America and has her own channel on YouTube. You can check her out below. So why would somebody make something like this? Well, it's done to further divide America. You know, I'm not a very political guy. I have too much going on in my life between having 4 jobs to have any bandwidth remaining for talking politics. But for my foreign viewers, America basically has 2 political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. Democrats tend to be the equivalent of the left-wing or labor parties, but in America. Republicans tend to be right-wing or the equivalent of the Tories or conservatives, although people exhibit traits from both sides. It is a spectrum. Now, while I don't know much about politics, I do know that President Obama, who was America's 44th president, and President Trump, who was America's 45th president, had 2 totally different policies toward Ukraine. While President Obama had a number of accomplishments during his time in office, he dropped the ball on Ukraine. It was on his watch that Crimea was invaded and annexed by Russia, and President Obama didn't do anything about it, later being quoted in an interview as saying, The fact is that Ukraine, which is a non-NATO country, is going to be vulnerable to military domination by Russia no matter what we do. Now, that is certainly a foreign policy that a president can have, but in hindsight, if President Obama had stood up to President Vladimir Putin back in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea, would the world be in this situation right now?
First, as authorized by the executive order I signed 2 weeks ago, we are imposing sanctions on specific individuals responsible for undermining the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and government of Ukraine.
Unfortunately, we don't have a time machine. But President Obama was succeeded by President Trump, and then something interesting happened. President Trump offered to send lethal aid to Ukraine, weapon systems, to help it fight its insurgency in the Donbass, Ukraine's breakaway republics. And one of the people who advised President Trump on national security issues was my Newsmax colleague, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. And here's what Dr. Gorka had to say about why lethal aid was so important to Ukraine.
When I was in the White House as strategist to President Trump, I was often asked, what's your boss's national security foreign policy stance? And I just spent 2.5 years teaching at Quantico, so I borrowed a phrase, a motto from the Marines, and I said, under President Trump, America, no better friend, no worse enemy. It's really that simple. If you're a good guy, an ally, a partner, we'll help you, we'll be on your side. If you're a bad guy, like Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, especially if you push the envelope, you'll be in trouble. Now, how did that work out in practice? After Crimea was taken by the former KGB colonel Vladimir Putin, Obama, and if you don't believe me, look it up, Obama sent blankets and night vision goggles. The then Ukrainian head of state actually addressed Congress and said, we need more than blankets and nods.
Blankets, night vision goggles are also important, but one cannot win the war with the blankets.
When we were in the White House, we realized lethal assistance is appropriate. Not the 82nd Airborne dropping out of the sky over Kiev, but Javelin, shoulder-launched anti-tank missiles. Because if you're in an old T-series tank, that's the great equalizer. That's how we did it, not with neoconservative invasions and regime change, but making tactical investments for strategic return. Because we knew, as did the president, that Vladimir Putin has been saying this for 20 years, since he became head of state, that not only is Ukraine illegitimate, but so is Poland, a NATO nation. So are the Baltic states, NATO nations. This has nothing to do with us provoking it, with NATO expansion or Russia being encircled. This is a former KGB colonel trying to recreate a Russian empire. So that's the difference. American leadership makes for a stable world. No better friend, no worse enemy. I detail it all in my article on surgical precision, surgical strike that you can read in the link I'm going to send to Ryan. But Ryan's right. America first does not mean America alone. It's about priorities and leadership.
Dr. Gorka is a nationally syndicated radio host of America First with Sebastian Gorka, and you can find links to his content below. So the average Ukrainian knows that it was President Trump who sent Javelins to Ukraine. They would never make a video like this because they know how he feels about their struggle. So I do not believe this video is true. I believe it is Russian propaganda, and poorly made propaganda at that, both from the language used by the soldiers to the ignorance of foreign policy. As Americans, our internal politics should end at the water's edge. Whether Republican or Democrat, we should all stand united in support of liberty and democracy, both at home and abroad. President Trump's decision to provide lethal aid to Ukraine underscored his commitment, showing that support for Ukraine's sovereignty knows no partisan boundaries. So to my Republican viewers who support President Trump, I urge you to consider this. Backing our former president doesn't mean turning a blind eye to the struggles of others seeking freedom. As we've seen, the values of freedom and democracy are universal, transcending political affiliations. If someone suggests that supporting President Trump means abandoning Ukraine, it's essential to recognize that manipulation may be at play. Let's stand together in solidarity with Ukraine, ensuring that the light of liberty continues to shine bright, not just in America, but around the world. America first means the first to stand up for freedom. Thank you for watching.
Hey everyone! New Ryan McBeth t-shirts and hoodies from Bunker Branding are available. I'm gonna get the HIMARS shirt. What are you gonna get, Donald? The Patriot shirt, 'cause I'm a patriot. It's the best shirt, the biggest shirt. Make 14 tangos great again. What are you gonna get, Barack? Let me be clear. I'm gonna get a Drone Sweet Drone shirt. What about you, George?
I'm going to get a Try That Missile shirt because they're weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, I'm going to get a Landmine Marker shirt because my presidency always blew up in my face.
I'll tell you what I'm going to get.
Ronald Reagan, but you're dead.
I came back to tell you that no matter our politics, we're all Americans. And we should buy Ryan's hoodies and t-shirts because they pay for the stock footage and licenses that allow him to make awesome content. So come on down to Bunker Branding and buy a Ryan McBeth t-shirt or I'll start the bombing in 5 minutes.